Historically, this field here was a wheat field. When I was a kid, this was wheat. Those were hay or barley or wheat down below. The big green field we came by over there was a wheat field or hay. Up above the ditch up here, this was all wheat. Everywhere you looked out here was wheat. My uncle across the road, where Doug Greeno's is, that was strip farmed, it was wheat. All the pivots and stuff over there, my uncle, we had a dairy, so it was corn or a grain or hay, and they chopped a lot of stuff because it was a pretty big dairy at the time. But anyway, so we planted this, I want to say in the early 90s, back to alfalfa, and just a good dry land. So I'm sure my dad, my uncles and everybody, when they did it, it would have been seed that we combined ourselves, so it would have been the old Ladac. And of course we did inoculate it because that was, now rich people do that, we don't do that. So it actually did really well. I mean, I remember we'd get 250, 300 bales. This is 77 acres. So it would do really well as a hay field. And then we didn't hay it for a number of years. And I took over the operation and we decided, well, let's hay it and see if we can get it kind of cleaned up. And we did. In the first year in my notes, we got like 240 round bales off of this. And then the next year, we got like 80. And then the next year, we got 40. And then we were like at 20, and we didn't really do anything different except we graze it. But you would look at it, and it was like the ground was barren everywhere. It was just horrible. So we thought, well, we're old farmers. Let's just go ahead and farm it up. And so we did. Oh, I planted pubescent wheatgrass in here too, like 10 pounds, and it didn't do anything. So we decided to chisel plow it, and I think we did that in the fall of 19. We chisel plowed it, disked it lightly, smoothed it up with a spike tooth, nothing major. We just wanted to get something to grow so it wasn't so barren, and so we'd have something to graze and maybe hay it, or just basically to graze. So then we know how hot it got in 20, and so it was a complete failure. We planted Willow Creek. It didn't, I think we hayed a little bit, and there really wasn't anything on here. So we left it, the cows kind of grazed it. The fall of 20, we got a little bit of rain, so I called Matt, and we got some rye, and he said, rye will get rid of that cheatgrass, it'll choke all that out. So we planted it pretty heavy, probably a bushel and a half,
somewhere in there.
But I didn't have a no-till drill then either. I just did it with my conventional one, which I don't think you have to have a no-till drill. We planted it, everything looked pretty good. Didn't really come up, but it'll germinate, you know, in the winter. So we waited, kind of started to get green, and then last spring, it looked like a lawn. I mean, it was so pretty and green. I'm like, wow, finally something's coming, you know. We may not hay, we might just leave that and graze that off. That'll be great. It was bulbous bluegrass. So we're like, crap. So once again, kind of thought of it as, well, it's a failure, but all we really wanted to do was cover the ground. So it wasn't what we wanted, but the ground was covered, so we left it alone, and then we grazed it. And so last fall, I was farming that big millet field down over the hill, and it started to green up, so I called Tom from the co-op, and we wanted to spray this side roll over here, which is another cover crop. And I said, hey, go up there and spray that. So we came up, and we think it was bulbous bluegrass. We sprayed it, and then the plan was we're going to spray it again. Well, now we got a no-till drill, so we'll do that. And this is ranch hand. We planted at 20 pounds. Sprayed 2 quarts of Roundup. Must have been around the 1st of June.
1st of June, probably.
Yeah, and then we use this other stuff. It's an AgriGrow product. It's called Ignite S2. We sprayed it on the ground with it too. And that just helps the seeds germinate. And what it does, just boosts your microbes in the soil. And that's it. Planted it and turned our back, and I call Matt all the time and say, oh my God, look at this, and oh my God, look at that, why is it doing this, why is it doing that, and what is this plant, and what is that? And he came down and looked at it, and every species that were in his mix came up. So we're pretty happy.
So oats is in this mix?
Yep.
Okay.
This mix is a 10-way blend. It's sorghum sudan. This is a 10-way blend of sorghum sudan, millet, and oats for the grasses. And then for your broadleaf or your legumes, there's vetch and crimson clover. And then for your brassicas, there's normal purple top turnips, there's rapeseed, and there's Winfred brassica, which I actually just pulled this one out of the ground. I wanted to show you. That's a pretty impressive taproot for a relatively drought stunted broadleaf. I mean, that taproot goes to my knee, so that's, I don't know what we got there, 20-inch, close to 2-foot taproot on a plant that's really not showing a lot above ground, but that says a lot about what that's doing below ground to bust through compaction layers. And that's part of the reason this is able to look as green as it is when it's relatively drought stunted like this, is because it's way down there fetching moisture from a lot deeper than some of these shallower rooted species like oats. And so that's the advantage to a diverse blend like that. You get that variance in rooting depths, and so you're kind of working on different levels of your soil compaction through those different root structures. So yeah, for 3 different brassica species. Obviously there's sunflowers in there. Those are just a black oilseed sunflower. Makes actually excellent forage in the fall. When Jim turns cows in here, they're going to pick every head off of these sunflowers first. That's almost always what they do first. And then we got flax in this blend too, which would be another cool season broadleaf. That's seeded out. You can see that that's already fully mature, but it'll probably still be holding some seed when we turn cows in here this fall, and they will graze that grain right off the top. The rest of that plant's not real palatable, so it'll mostly get trampled into the soil, which is the reason for it in that blend, just to have that ground cover component. I think that rounds out the mix. Like I said, 10-way blend, both warm and cool season species in here. You can kind of see that there's different levels of expression of the warm and cool season species both, but you've got pretty good variance across the board. Everything showed up at some point here. So overall, not a bad result for a dryland setting. So I was going to add a couple of pieces. There are some things that are different here. Obviously we're not irrigated. This is a much sandier soil than what we've seen so far today. I dug a little hole here. If you saw me jumping up and down on that. There's a significant compaction zone about 4 inches down. Goes, I think, with the wheat history here and conventional tillage. But exactly what Matt showed you with that taproot, that's what those species are intended to do in this case. As I understand, Jim's long-term goal is to get back to a perennial stand, and this cover crop and a couple more in succession is kind of the vehicle to do that, to prime this soil, to break that compaction as well as we can, and be ready to succeed at a perennial seeding. We clipped this a week ago, and I clipped 3 hoops that varied fourfold in the heavy one had a sunflower in it, so maybe it wasn't exactly a fair comparison. But conservatively, this is almost 2 AUMs per acre at 50% utilization. So, and some good high value things with the oat seed and the sunflower heads and that sort of thing. So I think been very pleased with it, especially considering how dry we've gotten and where we started with a sea of nothing but bulbous bluegrass here.
Up there and down there already.